It seems strange to me, and I'm sure strange to a lot of people out there in the land of coffee, that people other than coffee producers get to determine what should be the standard of a living income for coffee producers. Tell me why we're crazy and why what we're thinking is not right.
Well, first I would say that farmers are part of the process, right? And they're key part of deciding what is the diet, right? When we talk about earlier about what the living income is about, the income, the different products. So it's not like that they are a recipient only of this. I mean, we need their participation on this. Now, because of living income has existed for a few years now, one of the things that we wanted to do in the task force was to try to have more of a methodology that could be replicated beyond two, so the concept is strong, right? So there is a strength when we put that out.
This episode is proudly brought to you by Mapper Forward's workshop, It's Time to Become a Coffee Consultant. Learn how to diversify your revenue streams and create freedom from your day job while saying goodbye to that alarm clock forever by becoming a consultant within the coffee industry or directly to consumers who have shifted towards home brewing and home roasting. Protect your income from challenging times in the coffee value chain by taking this course today. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for details.
Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 3 of a 5-part series of a very interesting discussion with Miguel Zamora from the ICO. Miguel, we're talking about a living income for coffee producers. And in this episode, we're going to, after having defined what a living income is, we're going to talk about who are the stakeholders that get to determine that. So it seems strange to me, and I'm sure strange to a lot of people out there in the land of coffee, that people other than coffee producers get to determine what should be the standard of a living income for coffee producers. Tell me why we're crazy and why what we're thinking is not right.
Well, first I would say that farmers are part of the process, right? And they're key part of deciding what is the diet, right? When we talk about earlier about what the living income is about, the income, the different products. So it's not like that they are a recipient only of this. I mean, we need their participation on this. Now, because of living income has existed for a few years now, one of the things that we wanted to do in the task force was to try to have more of a methodology that could be replicated beyond two, so the concept is strong, right? So there is a strength when we put that out. When the process happens, the researchers, in many cases local researchers, have been trained in the methodology that go and gather information to try to estimate this living income information. When that information is gathered, that information is discussed with local stakeholders, cooperatives, other farmers, government organizations, civil society, to make sure that the information actually makes sense. And then when all of that comes together and people are in agreement, going back to the early podcast about consensus, which is a big thing we have to achieve, that information is released. When that doesn't happen, that means that at some point there was a disagreement on that for whatever reason. It is something that is not like entirely out of the process. But the key thing is that once that information comes out, we believe all of the relevant stakeholders have been able to participate, be part of that, and agree, okay, this number makes sense for this region. So I wouldn't say that anybody else is telling farmers what the living income is, but it's a process that we build together with them in the region. As you can imagine, all of the farmers of that region will be part of that, but it's like representative with cooperatives in the region that are representing farmers, and going back with the government that it represents the farmers too. So it's a process that's where the process also takes a long time, to come up with this, the benchmark of what it is. Additionally, as part of the larger process, we try to understand the actual income, so cost of production, efficiencies. Farmers are the ones who help to understand that, to provide information to how many, they bought fertilizer, how much they pay, when did they use it, the higher labor, temporarily, how much of that. So it is all part of that, and that information, again, it goes back to all of these stakeholders and need to approve and give us the green light to eventually publish that information, because what we want to do is to make that information public so others can learn from that, others can use it for decision making, and we can replicate that process in other countries. So that's how the approach. It's not really, from my perspective, anybody imposing something, but coming together to a number that is sound scientifically, or is sound on evidence that comes directly from farmers.
Who is commissioned with, is it, do you get an external consulting company like one of the big four? Are they the ones that are responsible for it? Does the ICO have employees that oversee it if the governments are the ones that are doing it? How does that work?
Excellent. No, it helps me to talk about the larger task force. So the task force, from the ICO perspective, it's me, right? Then other staff is involved. But we work with different technical work streams, and then we have different partners who provide more of that technical guidance. In the case of living income, we work very closely with Sustainable Food Lab and with COSA, the Committee of Sustainability Assessment, around the part of cost of production too. Sustainable Food Lab is also very linked to the Living Income Community of Practice, which includes many organizations who work on this topic globally. In the implementation part also, we work with key researchers on this topic, like the anchors from the Anchor Institute. The anchor is a method, it's a couple, but they developed this methodology that is widely accepted as one of the best methodologies to measure living income. But beyond that, in other countries, there is already a living income that the country has come up with their own methodology, and that information can be used too as a reference for this topic. But from the studies that are conducted on behalf of the task force, we work very closely with Sustainable Food Lab. Actually, more than working closely, they help to lead the process of gathering that, and COSA on the part of cost of production. But then again, with anchors, and also with New Foresight, which is another consultancy that helps in some of the countries with this information, and with later modeling that is used to try to understand what drivers can help to close the living income gap. So we work with organizations that do this in agriculture, even beyond coffee, but with a lot of specialization in coffee, and that directly interact with these local stakeholders to come up with this information in processes that take years, many cases, until we get to the point in which we start discussing the strategies that the government, that the sector will implement in that country.
It sounds like there's a lot of trust that is a baseline in a lot of this, in a lot of these processes. So I'm a trained scientist. Data is really, really important to me. But what's even more important is the integrity of the data that we're working with as a baseline. So how does the ICO approach making sure that the data, and it sounds like that there is a process to do that, because it takes so long to get to the point where you agree that there's a living income. How do you go through qualifying whether the data that you've been presented with has the level of integrity that informs a level of trust that says to you, okay, this is a number we should go with, or not?
I think that it is built in the process, as I was mentioning, several steps in which many stakeholders review that, check that, and say the information. Local stakeholders in many cases, right? Once the studies are ready, we share it with other stakeholders that have expertise in the topic to help us to make sure that it's all sound. But at the end of the day, once the local organization, the local government, the local coffee institute it's okay with that information. That's stronger than from my perspective, than anybody else can say externally, right? So
Right.
once as local stakeholders, which again is not only the government, because the civil society, the cooperatives, the different people who help to validate the information, what did they say? This is, the reality. It goes, there was an example, I won't name the country, but there was part of what they decided it was necessary for the income, included something that maybe others would have said, no, there's no way that this should be part of calculating. And maybe the example is not good, we cannot get into details. But at the end of the day, they were deciding what they need to be part of that practices in their community that are necessary for having a living income. Know what an external person should say. So I think that there are different parts in the process in which that validation at the local level happens, that, at the different stakeholders that get to review that information that make it sound from our perspective too.
And are decisions made based on this? What I mean by that is if all of these people who are not coffee producers get to inform the final number that is a livable wage, are decisions based... Income, thank you. This happens a lot less in this conversation than it did in our last before.
In a lot of conversations that I have about this.
But I'm doing a lot better than I did in our preliminary conversation. My point is, producers seem to be the ones that have to live by the decisions that are made about a number that is supposed to represent what they, for lack of a better term, deserve to live by. I'm struggling with understanding. It's not that I'm struggling understanding it. I'm struggling with the idea that anybody outside of the producer is getting input into determining what that livable income should be. And perhaps that's just because this is new to me, and the way that government works is often more complex than most of us realize. I don't think that that's okay, but that's the reality of the situation. But does the producer have to live by the number that that ends up being what is determined or deemed a livable income for producers? And are decisions made based on that number?
The decisions that are made by that number at our working in the task force. I mean, I don't think, it would be great if I could tell you that number has been met and now producers have to live by that. The reality is that producers are still far from, in most cases,
yes,
meeting that living income gap. Again, it's a reference. So it's just a point of reference that has been built, as in by like a sound, robust process, methodology, that have been validated locally by key stakeholders, including producers and their representative, and people who do this, who has the technical expertise in this topic. Will it be imperfect? Yes. I mean, think about poverty levels, right, that we read about that. They're built in a way, in the same way. Minimum wages, they're built, somehow they have like a different political decision, but some of the things are built somewhere in the same way. I think that this one, because of the strong participation of many stakeholders in local validation, has a really good and robust strength as a number. But again, it is a reference, and in some cases other countries have their other references that they have built in different ways, and it's fine, and we can try to work on that, because at the end of the day, what we want is not even that the farmers meet the living income, but that they go beyond that, right? But this benchmark helps to give us an idea how far we are to that minimum level of dignified life, I guess, that we will hope for farmers.
Yeah.
The decisions that are made based on that is that once that living income is understood, the average income is understood, that gap is understood, then the country, the sector locally creates strategies to try to close that living income gap. There's the different set of strategies and practices, as I mentioned earlier, around productivity, around purchasing patterns and procedures, around diversification, right? Around how much income actually arrives, that can be part of that set of strategies that the stakeholders at origin, at that country, decide to implement. And then comes the raising the funds to be able to implement that. So it informs decisions that are made, just like in many other things inform that decision. And then over time you measure. That is our idea. We haven't got to that point yet.
Mm-hmm.
Then over the years we measure how those strategies are closing or not that living income gap, which again, it keeps on changing too, because over the years, that study is valid now, but in 2-3 years, the cost of housing might have changed. The cost of production may have changed because fertilizer went up or down. So there are ways to try to reassess, not go through the whole study maybe right away, but have some adjustment for local inflation. And we try to understand how that living income gap keeps on moving, and how the initiative that will be implemented help to close that living income gap. So it's a way to bring a way to measure progress using sound data, using a robust methodology that has been tried in different places, in different countries, different commodities, in different agricultural products, to coffee, that help us to back up the larger initiative of bringing more funding for coffee, but that is used in a way that is later measured how it's actually closing the living income gap, right? So that's how the type of decisions that having a reference number helps to inform.
The irony, though, that all of this money is being spent on all of these studies by people who earn significantly more than coffee producers are making. I'm sure that there is a lot of people that are listening to these episodes that we're exploring this on and thinking, but why can't the companies that are commissioning and participating in all of this just pay more for coffee? I don't want you to answer that, because that's what we're going to discuss in the next episode. We're going to explore the challenges that are preventing farmers from earning a living income, and we can't have that conversation without starting to explore the role that pricing plays in a living income. And I think that that's a big part of this discussion, especially now when the C hit 275 a few days ago, and people are starting to really question the long-term viability of farming coffee, given the challenges and given the resistance of companies to pay the prices that are needed above the cost of production. So folks, join us for the 4th episode of this series in the next episode. Peace, love and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.